Nazra. Today she's going to be talking about the implications and benefits of augmenting human intelligence, and in particular, enabling people that are quadriplegic to be able to move their limbs with brain-machine interfaces. How amazing is that? Please welcome Nazra.
Awesome. Cool. So today I want to tell you about Ian, someone I want to introduce you to. Ian, when he was young, as a high school student, was super athletic. He played a lot of sports. He was on varsity football, and he also played football in university. A few years ago, when Ian was 24 years old, he went swimming with his friends to the ocean surf. He's super athletic. He knows he can do this. They're having a good time. They're swimming and having a lot of fun. But he swims under the ocean surf, and he ends up hitting a sandbank. And he knocks out completely. His friends rush him to the hospital, and a few hours later, Ian wakes up, and he's told that he's never going to be able to move his arms and legs again. This is a really, really, really sad story and experience to go through. But Ian was super lucky, because at this time, Ohio State University was working on a technology called brain-machine interfaces. And they turned to Ian, and they called him, and they said, "We think we might have a way to help you out. We think we can help you move your arms. We don't know if it's going to work. We're going to have to perform surgery on you. We're going to have to drill through your skull and implant a brain chip into your brain. We have no idea if this will be successful. It could completely go wrong, but we think it's worth a try." And Ian said, "This is an opportunity for me to do something bigger and better, and I think I want to do this despite not knowing what the outcome will be." And so he does. And they perform the surgery on him, and they implant a brain chip to his brain. And they also connect the brain chip to a electrical sleeve that's on his arm that receives the brain signals and sends them to the sleeve, and the sleeve is connected to the muscle fibers in his forearm and allow him to move his arms. This is really cool. So the researchers and Ian spent 10 weeks afterwards really, really training and understanding his brain signals and seeing if they could utilize this technology to enable Ian to move his arms. And they did. Eventually, Ian, just like the rest of us, was able to think and say, "I want to move my arms and fingers," and he did. And this sounds completely normal, but to someone who was told that they could never, ever use their arms or legs again, it's revolutionary. And what's really, really interesting, though, is that Ian's success story is not shared by other people. There are millions of other people around the world who had the same story as Ian, but they weren't helped out, and they're not helped out right now because this technology hasn't been scaled to them. And it's really interesting, and I think that brain-machine interfaces definitely has the potential to help millions of people out. So how did this happen? How did we get to the point where Ohio State was able to enable a man to actually move his arms when he was told he was never going to be able to? And that's because of a lot of advancements in research and scientists and really smart people trying to figure this out because they know it has a lot of potential. It started off with a research team in China who enabled a monkey that was paralyzed to move his legs. They implanted a brain chip into his brain and electrodes at the bottom of his spine. And when you're paralyzed and you have a spinal cord injury, you can still think, "I want to move my arms and legs." And if you were to receive the signals, if the bottom of the spine, the place where these signals are supposed to be sent to, were to receive these signals, you would be able to move your arms and legs. The problem is just the transfer of information cannot happen. And so with this technology, with the brain chip in the brain of a monkey and the electrodes at the bottom of his spine, we were able to wirelessly transfer this information to the brain and to the bottom of the spine, and so that the monkey was now able to move his feet. He was able to walk again. Another really cool advancement in this technology that's just really, really interesting is neural dust. So neural dust is about the size of a grain of rice. It's really, really small, and it can be attached to nerve cells and also muscle fibers and detect the data and understand the signals that we're receiving from these cells and fibers. And how it works is that the neural dust, which you see up on the screen, the two main components that are really, really important to understand is the piezoelectric crystal, which is the gray blocks, and the transistor. So the piezoelectric crystal receives ultrasound vibrations from outside of it. It takes these ultrasound vibrations, converts them into electrical energy, and sends it to the transistor. The transistor is then able to utilize this and creates an action potential in the nerve fiber that it's attached to, or the muscle fiber that it's attached to. And when this happens, this vibration then causes, and this the voltage that's generated causes the piezoelectric crystal to receive a signal from the nerve that's called the backscatter. And we're able to analyze the signal to understand what's happening. What does this signal mean, and how can we derive data from this to manipulate these signals? So essentially, it's kind of like a cycle. You have this interrogator that sends out these ultrasound vibrations. These are called carrier signals to the piezoelectric crystal. The piezoelectric crystal takes these vibrations, it turns them into electrical energy, it sends it to the transistor. The transistor then has an action potential as a result from the nerve that it's attached to. And from that, there's a backscatter signal that's sent back to this transistor. This backscatter signal is super important. It's what allows us to analyze the information that we're being given and really use that to understand what's happening with the brain, or the nerve that it's attached to, or the muscle fiber that it's attached to. And a way in which you can explain this, and a way in which you can understand this just a little better, especially with the action potential and the voltage that's generated, why it needs to be so high and why we need to have a backscatter signal that's super clear, is by using a waterfall. So let's say that the voltage is the height of the waterfall. The action potential is the potential energy generated by the water. Of course, by virtue of the distance from the waterfall to the ground, the action potential is going to be super high. And the voltage, because it's also high, the waterfall is also high, is also going to be high. So the action potential, whenever that is high, whenever the nerve's action potential is high, you also have a high voltage. And this allows you to have a clearer backscatter signal, which you can then analyze. And this is super awesome. It's really cool. And it allows you to then actually be able to see the signals that you're receiving and understand them. What does this mean? What is the brain really thinking? What state are we in when we receive these signals? So if you think this is really awesome and hard and maybe complex, and that there are some really cool people working on this, but you don't know what to do, or perhaps you think it's too complex, there's a lot that we can do right now. You can learn a little bit more about this technology, and we can actually read our own brain signals. I can do this, and you can do this. There are headbands out there called Muse headbands that allow us to do this. There are EEG electrodes that you can buy online that allow us to do this. And if you're interested in this space, something that I think really needs to be focused on in the next 5 to 10 years, and I definitely think it'll be figured out, is this problem of how do we get people like Ian, and so many people, millions who face that problem, and scale Ian's success story. How do we get other people around the world, these millions of people, to also have the same success story so that they can also move their arms and legs? And the problem here is that when Ian was going through this surgery, he had 10 researchers with him. He had weeks of training of trying to understand his brain signals, trying to understand how we can manipulate them. And I really think this problem can be solved if we figure out where the intersection of artificial intelligence and brain-machine interfaces can help out with this. So we can use AI to really, really understand and either refine which signals exactly correlate to move arms or move legs, and or just make this training process a lot faster so that we can scale this solution to millions of other people. And I think that this place is going in a really, really awesome space. There are a lot of cool startups and really great things that are happening aside from what I've just told you. Elon Musk has a startup, a company that he owns called Neuralink. He's working on how we can augment human intelligence, and how can we have thought-to-thought communication? How can we start to download knowledge into our brain and make understanding information a lot more faster? There are also other companies like MindMaze, Kernel, and Neuralink that are working on how can we cure neurological diseases. So epilepsy and seizures, for example, sometimes occur because of genetics. What if instead of using CRISPR to change these genetics, we just use brain chips that suppress the signals that cause seizures? There are so many different solutions out there to epilepsy that are worth exploring, and I definitely think this technology has the potential to solve some really, really hard problems and save millions of people. And I'm super excited to continue learning about this and to see where this goes in the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you. I know you're going to probably ask if anyone has questions, so does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Okay, just out of curiosity, any work being done to essentially use these transducer two ways to possibly reinvigorate feeling as well, but not just, obviously you got signals sending to your legs and everything to create movement, but what about going the other way so that it sends feeling of pain just in case you're injuring yourself? Is there any work being done on something like that?
So if I understand your question, you're asking me if there is any work being done right now for us to feel different emotions or suppress different emotions or feelings?
Physical feelings. If you're paralyzed,
Yes, yeah.
how do you feel if you're stepping on a nail?
Ah, I see, yeah. That's really interesting. I am not sure. Like, I genuinely don't know. I know that there's research being done, and of course, projects like Ian's that enable you to move. And when Ian moves his fingers, he's actually able to move them and play that guitar, but I don't know if he's actually able to feel the strings and the difference between the strings and like the guitar itself. I'm not sure about that one, but Google it and maybe let me know.